And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. This is the sports show devoted exclusively to St. Mary's University and its athletic programs. I'm Dean Beckman, joined once again by my co-host Donnie Netto, and we have a very special show on today's Cardinals Nest as we're going to kind of mix things up from our normal routine where we typically have an athlete for our interview segment, Donnie. Today we have Chris Kendall joining us, and Chris is, I kind of call him Mr. Everything at St. Mary's, right? Because it sort of feels that way, Chris. You've done a lot of different roles at St. Mary's for decades. I'll let you tell us how long that's been, but Donnie, I know both of us have enjoyed working with Chris over the years, and he's set to retire February 1st of 2018, so it's going to be sad to see him go and very unusual to be at St. Mary's without Chris Kendall, who's been a student and member of our staff for a long time.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And Chris, I want to be the first to congratulate you on an amazing run here at St. Mary's. And you know, you mentioned in our show that we talk usually with a student, and then a student athlete, and then a coach. Well, we've got one of both here, and Chris was an outstanding baseball player here at St. Mary's. He's in our Hall of Fame as a baseball player. He was a coach here. He worked under the legendary Max Morlock. Max stepped down and has been just amazing for St. Mary's. So congratulations on your retirement. But before you get to go off into the sunset, we're just going to spend this half hour kind of talking about St. Mary's, your time here. And, you know, first off, and we always ask our athletes to do this, take us way back. You're a freshman here at St. Mary's. Why St. Mary's? How did you ever come from, you know, to end up here at St. Mary's?
Sure. No, thanks. I went to high school in Chicago area, Loyola Academy. I was thinking about college my senior year, and a guy named Kevin Murtha came up to the baseball practice, and he had played in high school there, had come to St. Mary's, and he came and he was talking to the coach about Winona, Minnesota, about Max Morlock, and I was listening, and it sounded kind of interesting to me. Coincidentally, the next day, a guy we know very well, Tony Piscatello, showed up at my high school talking about St. Mary's. I took it as a sign. I applied to St. Mary's, only school I applied to. I never visited. Turned out to be the best decision of my entire life. And so I came to St. Mary's in 1975, got to play baseball for Max Morlock. Consider myself very, very lucky. And it just led to a series of great events. Got to know the Christian brothers, got to go to know St. Mary's. Married a local girl, raised my kids here, and I've been so fortunate.
You know, you graduated in 1979,
That's
correct?
Yep.
And so you think back to some of the faculty and staff who were at St. Mary's then. Do you think if some of them were to come back now, they might say, that guy's still here? Hasn't he graduated?
I think so. I think so. You know, one of the things I like to do is get up in the morning and write a poem, and the other day I wrote a poem about how I feel like I evolved from a dinosaur, but I'm kind of becoming a dinosaur. The frame of reference is changing a great deal, and it's hard to keep up with changing culture and all, but...
You know, one of the things I think we'll hear a lot of today are some names from the past, and we've already heard two. So let's touch a little bit more on Max Morlock. Talk about your relationship with him and what he meant and brought to St. Mary's.
Oh, gosh. Max is... He's passed on, but I got to tell you, he still sits on my shoulder over here. I still consult his character. I still know so many people, and will affectionately imitate his voice and some of the things he used to say. A fantastic man. He really, really did change my life, and used baseball to teach me a lot of life's lessons and things like that. Like I say, I stumbled into it pretty simply and didn't really give it a lot of thought, but oh my goodness, to be part of that era, to know Max was a great, great blessing for me. Really, really was.
You know, when you played here at St. Mary's, I know from all the times that we've spent together, there's so many great stories. As we call them, the Max stories. And the one that I'd like you to tell is the one about the baseballs.
Okay.
And I just think that, you know, it really kind of epitomizes who Max was, the type of person that he was, and how frugal he was.
Yeah.
But a great story, and
Sure.
I hope you could share that.
Oh, you bet, you bet. Max was frugal, and every baseball was important. He used to take the baseballs at the end of practice and throw them into a dryer with 1-inch gum erasers, and the racket was unbelievable. But he would clean them up, and we'd keep on using them. But at the end of every practice, typically about dusk, we had to put 40 baseballs in every 5-gallon bucket. And I'm not kidding, Max could just glance at a bucket and said, hey, you better count that one over there. And sure enough, there was 39 baseballs in there. And we could not leave until there was 40 baseballs in every bucket. And we're out there in the twilight looking for baseballs. And I learned a couple of things. There were some seniors who would show up once in a while with a baseball in their pocket. Oh, here it is, Max, and save us having to stumble around in the dark and the cold much longer. But it was really good. It was great. It taught us a good lesson about taking care of your equipment and that kind of stuff.
And then from playing, you moved on. I know you assisted under Max, and then filled in when you know, also were the head coach. Talk a little bit about that transition from being a player to a coach. What was that like for you?
I learned a lot about that. I'd be first to tell you that I was probably a better player than a coach for some different reasons. But I did try. In my mind, I always thought that I put coaches in kind of 3 categories. You know, one just threw the equipment out there and said have fun. You know, some were very regimented and it was all discipline, and maybe you'd even play out of a little bit of fear. But you'd beat up on that you just threw out the equipment. But then there were the coaches who just inspired you, brought out the best in you, and that was Max. And I tried to do that, but I did not probably have the depth of understanding. I mean, I enjoyed playing, but the theory and all that stuff, I was surprised that it was as challenging as it was. Kind of like teaching.
Exactly. You know, another name that you brought up, Chris, was Tony Piscatello, who also had a really long career at St. Mary's and still does some work for us on the campus. You know, obviously he's one of the main reasons you're here now, right? So tell us about Tony, your relationship with him, and what he has brought to St. Mary's.
Tony's my hero. I mean, you talk about a family man has done more for St. Mary's, I think, than any person I've known in my entire life. His memory, you know, he knows the class, he knows what their dad did for a living. He remembers names like you can't believe. But I still love the guy to death. I respect him a great deal. You know, it's funny, I look around campus these days, I'm getting a little sentimental, and I'm looking up on buildings or looking at the names of fields, and it's not just names, they're people that I was lucky to know. Leo Okramovich, who the soccer field is named after, was my academic advisor my first year. You know, I know Don Regan, I know Don Olson, Brother Charles Severn. I used to take walks in the bluff with him. So St. Mary's is really a personal place, and it's not just names, but I've been really fortunate to know the names behind and know the people behind some of those names.
Not to jump from athletics to other areas, but how has St. Mary's changed? What aside from maybe just the buildings, how has the school changed in the time that you've been here?
Yeah, you know, it's done both. It's changed and it's stayed the same. Clearly, the technology, the diversity on campus has changed a great deal. But I've always felt that St. Mary's attracts really good people who want to be a part of important conversations in young people's lives. I think it's a combination of the mission, the size, you know, the city of Winona. I think it really does attract good people who want to make a difference in people's lives.
So what would you tell incoming freshmen or high school students who are looking for colleges? How would you describe St. Mary's to them?
I like proportion, you know. I think you don't get lost. There's layers of people and systems, so it's hard to fall between the cracks. I always describe it as a place of important conversations. I know back in the day there were Christian brothers who would either give me a hug or give me a kick in the butt, and it was usually at a good time and an appropriate time. And I still think that it isn't just a faculty that can explain a concept, but they get to know you so they can explain it in terms that you get to know. So a new student coming in, I would say keep an open mind, be coachable, look for people who you trust, and take risks and try to take advantage of your time there.
And we're back here on a special edition of the Cardinals Nest. We have Chris Kendall on the program. Chris will be retiring from St. Mary's after 33 years of service to our university. He's retiring on February 1st of 2018. And so we're reminiscing about Chris's days as a student at St. Mary's. He graduated in 1979 and has been with the university ever since. And so Chris, as you look back now, we sort of talked about your days as an athlete. Tell us about your days as a student at St. Mary's and some of the people you remember on the faculty and staff at that time.
I was an average student, but I had some great teachers, some who I still, like I say, talk with these days. I had a specialized major in language arts, which was really just writing. It was kind of, I always would say it was English without having to read Chaucer. But it was technical writing, creative writing, journalism, those types of things. And it really helped me a great deal because if you can talk, if you can write, you can do a lot of different things. So it really did help me a great deal. Like I said, I'd mentioned some of the legends from St. Mary's back in the day. Dick Cowles, you know, I knew nothing about science, but I needed to take a science class, took a heredity and society class, and when I see him now, I still talk about Mendel and genetics of corn, and we pick up with the conversation. It's been a lifelong conversation. And again, you know, St. Mary's talks about relational education. I mean, but it really is true. You know, faculty come into St. Mary's and they want to know who they're teaching so they can teach them really well, and they take real interest in them.
You know, I think one of the things that people, anybody that knows Chris, knows that he is by far a happy-go-lucky guy. Always a smile on his face. You know, and just enjoys life. And I'll never forget, I have two amazing stories of Chris that will stay with me forever. One was we had an alumni baseball game. And, you know, we've got all these alums back, and they're all in their baseball pants and their shirts and this. And in strolls Chris with a bat on his shoulder in blue jeans. And he walks up to the plate, hadn't stretched, hadn't done anything, walks up to the plate and slaps a double to right field, and that was it. He was done. Okay, runner, I'm done. But that was Chris. He just happy-go-lucky and showed up. When I started working here, and I've been here 23 years now, and used to Slopich softball team, and we needed a couple of guys for a year, and we asked Chris to join us, being a baseball player, thinking, oh, this is going to be great. Chris Kendall's out there. And most of the guys on the team didn't know Chris from Adam, and so he's out in left field. Now, if anybody's played Slopich softball here in Winona, you know that it's the mat rule. If the ball hits the plate or the mat, it's a strike. So Chris is out in left field, and our pitcher, Jerry Koba, makes the first pitch. Randy Lasowski is umping. Ball misses the mat, and Randy calls it a ball. And out of the blue, from left field, come on, Blue, you're killing us out here. And of course, nobody knew Chris. And here's Chris. Oh, I mean, and that's to me is Chris Kendall. He's this guy who's just, he's going to have a great time, but when push comes to shove, he gets the job done. And those are two stories that I have that will live with me forever. And so I'm glad I could share those. Chris, you were among your gazillion jobs that you've held. You were the athletic director at St. Mary's. Talk a little bit about that time and what you saw as the growth in athletics from your time and now until with Nikki there now.
Yeah, you know, really, I think when I became the athletic director, Nikki was a great help from the get-go. She was softball coach at the time. I had come from a dean of students position, which was a lot of stress, and you know, I've had a lot of jobs at St. Mary's. On one hand, I think I can't hold down a job for more than about 5 years, but be able to shift the energy, you know, from kind of a stressful thing to back to athletics was such a great time. And it also was a time, I think, Brother Craig Franz had come on board, Brother William came on board, and I think that the athletic department was re-energized. We did an external peer review and really said, you know, let's pay attention to athletics and development more. We had a football task force. We were saying, let's start football, and the trustees came back and said, you know, before you have another kid, let's take care of the ones that we have, which was a great moment, I think. And since then, I really think that we can point to a lot of areas of success, become much more competitive. It's a tough conference. You know, we're a smaller school in there. Goes along with my being a Cub fan, I'm a little bit of the underdog, but hey, you got to find a way to do it. And I think through a lot of passion and hard work, I think we overachieve quite a bit from time to time, and it's great to be a part of that kind of a story.
You know, I think one of the funny things, you look at this man sitting here with a nice shirt and tie on and all. You know, I'm not sure how many people really realize what kind of a risk taker this man is. Drove a race car competitively, hang glides, flew a plane, skydived. I mean, this guy, he does it all. Can you talk a little bit about that side of you? And I'm sure that Jenny wasn't necessarily really happy with some of those adventures that you like to partake in.
Yeah, you know, it was a natural thing. I was born in San Diego, California. My dad worked on the Atlas missile program. He raced cars. A lot of interest in aviation. The Goodyear blimp was kept in a hangar about a mile from my house. I live right near Miramar Naval Air Station. So things were always flying or going fast. So it just seemed like that's the way life went. And then after time, I realized not everybody thought that way. But the racing was a great family event. Raced Formula V sports cars. That was great times. When I came to St. Mary's in '75, the first week of school in St. Ed's, there was a poster on the wall. It said, "Join Winona's newest sky surfing school." And it turned out to be a couple of guys who had just built a hang glider and flew it a few times and decided to open a school. And I was their one and only student and survived and ended up marrying one of the guy's kid sisters. And again, just in the right place at the right time, and good things happen. You know, people say, "Oh, you're taking all these risks. Do you want to die or something?" I say, no, not at all. I want to live. You know, and I do some of those things, but I don't do them, you know, in a risky way. I pick my days and everything, those things, but it's been a good ride.
Can you talk quickly about retirement? And I know that you have some plans in place and what you want to do. Talk a little about what's going to be life after St. Mary's.
Yeah, that's a good question. I had several renditions of a plan, which is odd for us. We never really had a plan. It was just jump in and hold on. But we do have a little farm down by Rushford, spend a lot of time there. I'm working on renovating the house, and we used to go there on weekends and just kind of thrash the gardens back into shape. But I look forward to being there at the right time, to weed at the proper time, plant at the proper time. I'm looking forward to continuing writing some songs. I've got an old wooden French-built sailplane I want to rebuild and hopefully fly someday. My hang gliding days, I'd say, are done. My landing gear is getting a little bit old. I notice when I come in, I don't have the spring I used to have when I land. So, and I think Jenny and I want to travel a bit more. You know, next chapter of life, we'll see what happens.
You know, we've talked about many of the hats that you've worn at St. Mary's: student athlete, athletic director, dean of students was another one, vice president for student development was in your current position. What has allowed you to do so many administrative jobs, as we would say, very effectively? What are some of the qualities you think that have allowed you to do that at St. Mary's?
You know, I enjoy people. I enjoy trying to look at a situation and leave it better than I found it. I like variety. I think that my mind likes this kind of work more than my body does, because it is be pretty stressful sometimes. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a combination of those factors. I usually come in the morning and say, I'd like to get these 5 things done, and typically I never have the day I expected to have. Right. I do like shifting gears, and I do remember one day when I was athletic director, actually for a little while, I was both the athletic director and the vice president for student life for a short spell. And I remember I had a meeting in the morning with the cabinet. In the afternoon, I was on a bobcat spreading dirt in left field on the baseball field. And I thought, I'm the luckiest guy in the world here. I'm just, you know, I enjoy the variety a great deal. I like people. Has
it settled in, the retirement? I know you don't want to harp on it, but has it settled in? It's been 33 years.
I did take a little time off this summer, kind of practice, and I think it's going to be okay. You know, like I say, I had a sense of urgency to try to have a plan. Right now, I think we're going to see how the summer goes, and then the fall, Jenny and I will decide we're going to move the farm in Rushford, or if we just want to. We got a couple of kids up in the Twin Cities. I'm leaving it a little bit open at this point in time. never really walked toward a location, but I kind of walked in a direction, and I think that's what's going to happen.
He had asked you the question earlier, Chris, about how St. Mary's has changed over the years. Now, when you were a student at St. Mary's, it was a college. We're now a university, and you have been involved in a lot of the planning for the thing. What direction do you see St. Mary's headed into the future? Higher education is always changing, and St. Mary's is no exception.
Yeah, these are, for me, you know, I wonder if it's because I'm getting older or if times are getting more complicated. But I think what I've noticed more than anything is there used to be things used to happen on a critical factor would change something. Nowadays, it's a combination of factors that lead to change. And higher ed is still dealing, I think, with the internet and the cost of education, job market. The world is changing very, very quickly. And education had been kind of a traditional model, and I think it's being pushed. You know, I think the fact that St. Mary's is small, attracts really good people. I think we're better suited to be quick on our feet and adapt and, you know, work toward the opportunities as they come. And, you know, we'll continue to educate students into the future.
You know, another thing I wanted to ask was about Mary's. You have been probably a part of the biggest change when it comes to facilities, our new Science and Learning Center, of course, but then all of the upgrades to the athletic facilities, too. So talk about that standpoint.
Yeah, you know, it's been really neat to watch some of the things that have happened. And I really feel that when somebody drives on campus, the improvements made to the athletic fields really says, you know, athletics is important at St. Mary's, you know, and how they're actually going to be laid out, who they're going to serve, with an eye to the future, and leave yourself some options and some flexibility, you know. So I think it's really great. St. Mary's has got a really great strategic plan, but I think at the same time you need to keep an eye open for a changing environment and opportunities. And you know, I think that St. Mary's has done a great job navigating through to this point, and I think that the recipe to take us into the future.
In a few minutes, we want to close the program with a song. You're an accomplished songwriter and musician, so we'll get to that in just a little bit. Before we do, though, Chris, I want to give you a chance to talk about Donnie Netto a little bit. Now, this show is about you, and we want to devote it to you. But as Donnie pointed out, he's been here almost as long as you have, just a decade behind you. And I know you've worked closely with Donnie over the years.
Donnie, I'm envious of Donnie for many, many reasons. His relationships with lots of people, his work ethic. But I'll never, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I'll say, Donnie, how do you do all this? He says, I love my job. I love my job. So, you know, I think when a student comes to St. Mary's, you know, my hope is that they can take responsibility for themselves, they can find their niche, and then through that they can go on and help other people, and that's exactly what Donnie.
Well, I think that's one of the things that Chris talked about too. Is that, you know, it's a great place to work. St. Mary's is a great place, and it really is. And I still to this day will say I love my job because I do. It's a great place to work. You get to work with great people, and it makes every day fun. And you know, Chris and I have collaborated on a few things. I got to be the one to design the for one of his CDs, for one of his songs. I did several posters for his music. So it's, you know, it's been great. And as we get prepared for this ending, I think another neat story that I'd like you to tell is, I know you're a passionate musician. You talked about your poetry, but the way you write your songs is a little bit out there. Is that a safe way to put it? Talk about how you come about writing your songs.
Because it is a busy, busy life, a work life. I get up early, and I jump in the bathtub with my clipboard, and I usually think, what have I been thinking about? What's a vivid something? It's my time to kind of process what I've been thinking about, what's coming ahead. But to be able to head into work with a song in your pocket, it gives me a little bit of energy, and I've kind of my little fun. And once I get to the office, I belong to everybody else. And it's really been a great way to kind of help me to think, what have I been thinking about, what's important. And but yeah, it just became quite a few years ago, probably over 2,000 songs ago.
Another real quick story before Chris brings out his guitar, because he's very good on his guitar. But growing up, my boy Andy and his boy Billy played hockey together. And one day we asked Chris if he'd play the Star Spangled Banner before one of our games. And we're thinking, you know, he'll come out and play with his, you know, guitar or whatever. He comes out with his accordion. And he played the Star Spangled Banner on his accordion. A very, very talented musician that you've been. it's greatly appreciated, everything you've done, and if nothing else, the friendships that you've made. Thankfully, you only live 3 houses away, so I'll get to see it a lot. So.
I appreciate the euphemistic view that you have there. And, you know, I have always tell Jenny, I said, you know, people really don't know what I do, but they know that I'm doing a job that they don't want to do, so they appreciate that. And a lot of it is just every day smiling and heading into the unknown and trying to give it your best shot. Every day is a little bit different. Situations are similar, but different. But I've been so darn blessed, and you know, and usually it's because my grandmother, Max Moloch, my parents, I've got a lot of good people who have guided me through, and I consult their characters often. So really, I'm a bunch of people in one, trying to get through and make things a little better.
So Chris, thanks for being on the show, and tell us about the song you're about to take us out.
It's a song called "What We Leave Behind." I think people get busy just trying to get through the day, but we lose track of the fact that we do have a trail before. You know, if you can leave it better than you found it, that's really the goal, no matter what the situation is. So it's a lot about my grandmother. A lot of my songs are about my grandmother, who I love a great deal. And yeah.
Hey, Chris.
What he left behind. Was a kid, I read Robin Hood, and I'd fall asleep wondering if he was bad or good. They always gave to the poor, but did anyone in Sherwood learn a little less is sometimes more? It's what he left behind. It's what he left behind. What he left behind. You know, my grandma loved me, I could see it in her eye. And when she passed away, that's the reason why I cry. But all the things that she gave to me, my heart, and though she's gone to a better place, she's really not too far. 'Cause what she left behind, what she left behind, what she left behind. That's why I don't really care if you're a mover or a shaker. Won't you tell me by your actions if you're a giver or a taker? I don't care.